I'm with Peter Morgan, and your most recent movie is Hereafter, working with Clint Eastwood. And there seems to be this idea that Clint doesn't work on screenplays, but that what you wrote is what he shot. Is that true?
It's true.
Wow. How often has that ever happened to you in your career?
Never. And I hope it doesn't happen again.
Why? Would you have liked to have taken a crack at it?
Yeah.
What would you have done?
I don't know. Worked with him on it a bit. I really only got to know him now, actually, afterwards. You know, during the time of the
promotion.
Yeah, well, not the promotion so much, but the release, and you know, we spent some time together, and I saw him on the set. He's just the loveliest guy, so I feel slightly deprived of a part of the process. Having said that, I think the actors feel slightly deprived of the process too, and the editor, and everybody. You know, this is the way that he does it. Which is, you know, and it's partly me coming at it with all the neurotic baggage of thinking that more work means better work.
Which it usually does with screenwriting.
Mostly it does, but sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you can unpick something.
Let's say we looked at The Queen as an example.
That's an unhelpful example if you're Mr. Eastwood.
Well,
because we wrote and wrote and wrote.
Exactly. But what's interesting about this movie, and what I like about the movie, is that it is unusual in structure. It is not predictable in any way. And it interlocks a number of different stories. And I wondered if you could tell me how you came up with the structure that you did.
Completely unschematic, unplanned. I wrote it for myself, and I wrote the screenplay in a disgracefully short period. And I was listening to what you were saying, and you know, part of the genesis of this was I wrote it, and it went into a drawer, and 6 months later a friend of mine died, and because I was working on an assignment, and then I pulled it out because I wanted to deal with this material, you know, and it went to Kathy Kennedy and then to Steven Spielberg.
Who flirted with it.
And he flirted with it by giving me some script notes, which I thought were terrific, and I addressed them and loved writing it, and he read it and said, "You must come out to Los Angeles immediately," and I was thrilled because it was obvious that I'd done great work. And
well, you know his reputation,
which is
he flirts with many things and says yes to very few.
Well, that's not my point in this instance. My point in this instance is about, does it always make it better? And he read the script, and he said, as I'd written it, and he said, "I'm really sorry, I've made your script worse." And he said, "Everything that was unique and special and unpredictable about this screenplay, I just ruined." And he'd given me a very commercial note. And perhaps, just perhaps, the reason you do like this film is precisely because it is unthought through. Because when you work things through, then frequently you dig deep into a treasure trove of convention.
I agree. And what I do like about this movie is that it still has raw emotion in it. There's a great deal of pain and sadness, but it's right there, and it's not fake. And that must have been important to you to make sure that that was true.
I was powerless. I wrote the screenplay, and the next time I saw anybody connected with the movie was in the last week of filming.
So do you think that the writing that you did that was influenced by the death of your friend had an enormous impact on
No, the writing I'd done prior to that, I was then intending to do a bunch of writing, but I never got to that. And you know, I spent some time in the process thinking, I feel a bit bitter about that. because I feel it's sort of scripters interrupters. You know, I haven't been allowed to do my work. But spending time with Clint over the past few days, I'm not so sure I agree with that anymore. And I do think, for better or for worse, he has his process, and it has real merit.
So the 3 stories that you're working with here, why those 3, and where did they come from?
I don't really know. I mean, the twins were certainly the heart of the story for me.
Which is the part of the story that makes me cry.
Well, not necessarily everybody. I mean, certainly for me, they're the heart of the movie. And but for Clint, the entire movie was seen through the Matt Damon character. And for Kathy Kennedy, the whole movie was seen through the Cécile de France, the female character.
She's the character I responded to the most directly, and
right.
I loved her, and I loved that whole story. And I probably responded the least to Matt Damon, but I find that a lot of my friends who are men are hanging on to Matt Damon. See, I think it has a lot to do with who you identify with.
I agree, and I think that the risk, or what's unusual about the piece, is that you're then, I do think, it's only natural that people should identify more with one or the other, and that leaves you with 2/3 imperfect connection, if you see what I mean. It's a really unusual picture, and I think its unusualness. You see, I've seen it twice, and the first time I didn't particularly care for it. And but I'm prepared to admit that most of that was because I didn't care for my work. I kept thinking, I wish I could have, or what did I know? And so that was what I struggled with. Just neurotic perfectionism, anxiety,
Sure.
creative anxiety. And the second time I saw it, which was at the New York Film Festival. It was a very warm screening, and I had a really good time. And I was moved by it, and I was able to enjoy it not as the author, but I was able to enjoy it as a spectator. And there were bits that I didn't care for, but all in all, it charmed me, and its honesty charmed me. And I can say this with no desire to take any credit for it, because this is Clint's film. I mean, I was not involved at all.